Okay, so let's do it. I really hope that you will not freeze. I might try to come up with some workout exercises when it's halftime. But anyway, I'll try to actually make you, I hope, laugh a bit. So that's maybe getting better. So I'm Daniel. I'm here. I'm very grateful to be here in this conference. I'm coming from Berlin, and I work for Oberlo and Shopify at the same time. It's a bit of a schizophrenic thing, but I like it. And I'm doing data for 10 years now, maybe, mostly for startups, give or take some years for corporations. And I've seen all kind of crap in my life, good and bad. I'm certified up to 20 million users, so I, things I'm coming from everywhere. I think I have a very versatile and lucky past that I could work for e-commerce companies, for urban mobility companies, for productivity companies. That I could work for Microsoft and Zalando, very different sized companies, very different type of companies in terms of culture. And I also seen all these funny things called like AWS and Azure and GCP come and go. So my perspective might be a bit out of line, I might say. I'm doing startups for 20 years now, so I'm not really getting overly excited of the new JavaScript framework of the day. I read too many Gartner reports, and one thing that stuck in my mind is a lovely acronym called TCO, total cost of ownership. Like, really, if you do something, how much will it cost you? And again, this talk I think is not complete, so I'm really looking forward to have feedback, and I will tell you why it's that way. And again, take my word, that's true that I'm stupid, lazy, slow, and old. So that's giving some kind of a pinch of salt to what I'm saying. But if you want to walk away because it's slightly cold here, that's it. That's the essence of my presentation. Keep it simple, stupid. Okay, that's what I learned throughout the years. And this whole thing started like 2 years ago. I was again very grateful to be invited to have a keynote in Berlin about what I think about data. And I kept refining the thing because I received a lot of good feedback, interesting feedback on this. Talk was delivered in Berlin, Warsaw, Budapest, different places. And also I was lucky to see more companies from up and close. So I tried to incorporate all the things I heard from the audience, be good or bad. Sometimes you're crying on each other's shoulder. It just happens. But again, that was the main essence of that base talk, the data janitor. Uh, and I think it's still true, but I might be a bit more even bolder than I used to be before. Again, I say like, keep it simple. Don't run. Take the long view. And again, deliver something that's in production. And also, we live in a very, very immaculately new and shiny world. Just because you can do something, please don't necessarily do it. This might sound a bit cryptic, but we'll get to like very, very funny things today. I added 2 points to this. So like, I most important is the last one. You are not Google, okay? You might think you want to be Google. You might think you are Google, but you are not. So most of the problems you're gonna have will not be the same that they have. And also, these two ones kind of related. That the most important thing I figured is like really, if you know what to worry about and what not to worry about, you're already in a good place. It doesn't matter what kind of technology you use or whatnot, but it's the back. And think about it, where you really have to do that thing. And 2 years ago, I was more like that. Oh, we're in this hype thing, big data, deep machine learning, blah. I'd say just looking at the conferences these days, it's more like a war now. Never forget that there are a lot of companies who want to make money out of you, okay? And they come here and other places to convince you that you should, give your money to them. It's fine. They have to make a living. Still, think about what they're saying and why they are saying, what is the motivation behind this thing. Talking to friends and enemies, I think these are the main things were like on the top of the mind, like, we have to worry about these things. They're coming up on us. This is like in the Y2K of data type of thing, but it's over, kind of. I believe that you have to worry about slightly different things, which are not that sexy, not that, I don't know. We can't solve them that easily, but again, I'll try to touch base on these ones. Lovely lady, Monica Rogati, VP of Things, VC now, have all the credentials from big universities, came up with this understanding of the hierarchy of needs like a Maslow pyramid. I kind of agree with this because in my previous presentation, I tried to go through a typical history how data gets done in a company. What are the roles that are getting started? Who are the people doing some things? What is the order of things happening? And I was really happy when I figured that she came up with this framework. And I will try to talk about how, in reality, this pyramid gets built. It's gonna be funny. What do you think? What's the level you start? Almost. Most people I talk to say that they start in the middle. Okay, like this aggregate analysis thingy. You have to do some kind of BI, as they say it these days, like business intelligence and stuff. So you start counting your beans, and you put beans to one folder to another folder, and you're happy. Most important lesson: don't skip leg day. So if you are doing business intelligence, you really actually have to know what you're counting, because that's where the whole horror starts. That you start mixing up apples and pears and stuff. You have to understand what are the things you're really working on. This might involve a bit of more technological things that you might think if you're a BI analyst. And again, it's also a bit like computer scientistically that you have to have KPI definitions that are programmatic. Okay, you run a bit of a something, I don't care what kind of code, but then it's reproducible. You can run the same KPIs, and when the big VC comes over and asks you, oh, how did you get that number 6 months ago? You can say, I did this. And it's very important to start this as soon as possible, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of, I call data mythology, that you have to figure out that what happened when. Oh, that was like the bad hair day. I remember we dropped all the data. It's very hard to figure out what's happened later. Also, if you're doing this part of the job, you always have to look at the data. Always. Please. Because if you come up with, if you tell me, if I hear the word average, I run out of the room. Okay? If I hear the word median, I think I hope. Look at the distribution, look at the change of the distribution, and then come up with some kind of understanding of what's happening. Don't, cherry pick numbers here and there. At this stage, I think you can really survive with a very lean stack. Things that are almost like English readable. Okay, Python and SQL, we like them because they are even like sane people who are not computer scientists can kind of figure out what's happening there. It's not about just brackets. And most likely you are 1, 2, 3 people sitting in a room, and you can definitely survive with Matabase. This is all free, open source, whatnot. Guilty as charged. I have 2 open tickets in the Matabase code base for 1.5 years they didn't fix. So everything comes with a bit of a caveat, but good enough. Fine. What type of minefields you start to have when you start building out this organization? Usual suspects. Who has NPS? Net Promoter Score. Great. Net Promoter Score is one of these very typical things when you take one number and you try to describe the universe with that. One thing is that it's pretty easy to prove mathematically that it's wrong. Like, it's a funny step function that if you just change the input slightly, it can change with a very wide output. Your sampling is skewed. The answers are like unsure. You have to choose a number. And again, then a board of directors, whoever sits together, say, oh, our NPS is going up today. Tomorrow it's going to be down. This is not something that's meaningful KPI for a business. Still, if you have to use this for some reason, if you don't look at just the exact number, but how it is distributed and how the distribution is changing, you can kind of see something out of it. Look at this lovely lady. Eva writes a good write-up, James Matthew. Other thing happens typically, Google Analytics gets involved in the organization. Okay, so you're actually knowingly collecting data in the wrong way on a snappy interface, and if you want to look at it in a meaningful user granular and raw way, you pay 150K per year. Does it sound like a deal for you? I don't know. I think you could hire like 2 people for that money. But it's, the root of evil is getting there. It's like it's starting to grow and become of the part of daily life. And then you can come first XKCD. Sorry, I'll have I think 3 XKCDs. Then Google Analytics is the first interface where the company is trying to come up with all kind of fairy tales about the same data. How do you interpret it? Very good stories are hidden here. But they should be shared afterwards. Every stage I will try to refer to someone who's not me, who's the hero of the day. Good guy, knows him. Martin sits at a company called Project A Ventures in Berlin. That's like a operational VC, meaning that they not just give money to companies, they also help them build the companies. So he sees every year, 20-ish companies trying to do some kind of data operations, and he's still optimistic. It's very hard. But he came up with some very nice presentations on how to define KPIs, especially for e-commerce companies. And I think the approach is pretty nice and straightforward, and also tries to figure how can you make value out of data if you're small. Besides that, they just released an ETL, open source ETL tool that I'm going to refer to later. Also, it's called Mara. Feel free to use and abuse it. Good stuff, what they have. Okay, so we have our lovely pyramid. It's done here, okay? In the middle, we covered. What should come? Should we go down or up? Don't care, okay. So let's go up. Typically, what happens now, people are having a bit of a BI, then they have the urge to have a bit of machine learning. A/B testing, experimentation. So cool, let's do it. So remember, we don't have anything down there, but we do this. Again, I believe that what we should do is data, but sometimes I'd say that, again, like smarter guy than me, but I dare you that 9 out of 10 cases you need SQL, okay? If you can master your SQL, you're pretty okay to understand what's happening. And that's what they call AI these days. This sounds a bit harsh, okay? Previously I was trying to, the ways how to do A/B testing, and not guilty as charged. I burned a lot of resources doing A/B tests on mobile clients, on 10 million users or whatnots. Failure, okay? 3 major reasons. One is you don't have enough users. Most likely, you don't have enough users to run this. 2, it's not easy, so you will make major mistakes during this project. 3, if you're all good, typically, 9 out of 10 will not give you an uplift. So if you just simply multiply these numbers together, that's kind of, it'll be a failure. And again, I'm coming from total cost of ownership. So you're gonna make people work on this for months. And then at the end, it's like, we're not worse. Great. Again, number, smart guy, booking.com. So if you're kind of an e-commerce-ish player, then you have typically 2-3% conversion rate. And if you want to see like a bit of a change, you have to experiment with approximately 12 million users. If you're big, you can do it. But most of the days, you're not working at Google. I'm already sobbing. Computer science people generally don't really like R. If R is in production, they start to scream and run away. But still, besides the fact that I also believe that not everybody should design a language or an API, if you want to build or you have to build simple data products, so there's a logic that interacts with the database, and there's an interface that people can, do their things and they get their CSV or chart, whatever. Still, Shiny is a very interesting tool that you should look at because it's the biggest hack of the universe. But you can build a data product within staying in R. You don't have to do like JavaScript magic, SQL magic, and Python magic at least to have like back and front and stuff. You can do the whole thing in Shiny. If you value speed, I think it's a good option. What typically happens when you're building this layer in the company? Yes, again, somebody sometimes did something, kind of documented it, hacked the p-value a bit, and said like, now we think that all of our users are blue. And if you want to revisit this half a year later, we're gonna have problems. Typically, you have some kind of an R thing in production that's very hard to scale. And again, as far as people try to impose their will on reality, a lot of beliefs are getting hidden in this understanding of the world. Now that we have covered this book, we can get to deep learning. Okay, typically then comes deep learning because you have to do deep learning, otherwise your company's stock value goes down, right? You know what? There's some reason. So that's like, you know, a piece of cake. And even this lovely guy called Mr. Karpati, who's sitting at Tesla now these days, again, same thing, you don't have data. If you're a PhD student, you worry about, oh, what kind of algo should I use to be the best? But if you're trying to make a freaking car autonomously drive, the only thing you worry about is data. And they have some, okay? And they still worry about it. So most likely, again, you are not Google, you're not even Tesla, so you don't have enough data to do deep learning. What can you do about it? You can make your own data points. Really, I see this happening, that sometimes data departments actually come up with a small mobile app, be it some kind of a Tinder fake of whatever, just to give to the user and try to get some data out of them and try to realize what's happening. So it's okay, it's not cheating if you like actively trying to get data and not just, you know, say, oh, we don't have that thing. It's okay. And sometimes it's actually much more faster than trying to get the data out from your organization. It used to be the thing that machine learning people were worried about, you know, cleaning data, getting data. Now it's fighting containers. Last 2 years was about trying to make data happen in a heavily boxed environment, let's say like that. And the understanding I have from the community is that containers are great if you're talking about apps, stateless apps. But data mostly is about like these funny components, you know, databases, queues. You can pretend that it's stateless, but mostly stateful. And this gave rise to like a whole new phenomenon, like, you know, the data science platforms. Because you just couldn't handle this complexity. You had enough problems already, so you have to buy another product just to be able to run the same things you could run 2 years ago. But now you have to put in like 3 boxes in there and then worry about them. I'm pretty biased about containers, but let's just look at like, I think this is the best fairy tale or parable and the most nice way I could figure what I think about containers. And again, deep learning, we're getting to the rage part or ranting part. Most important thing is really, like, do you really need it? What is the possible business benefit you can have out of it? And it's the same just with like machine learning. If you really have to do it, I think TensorFlow is a good choice, still the best, because it's not like a vanity open source project, but something that actually works in production, from DSPs to TPUs. You don't have TPUs, they have. And it's written kind of the same way. It has like industry strength ecosystem, really working tooling. But again, that is coming from, will compression be machine learning's killer app? That's coming from a guy I really admire. His name is Pete Warden. He's leading the TensorFlow efforts for mobile at Google. And the only thing that he could come up with as a business value, that you can compress porn on the end device with deep learning, I think that maybe not worth it. So my hero of the day on this one is this guy who's sitting in LA. He's doing the LA Data Science Meetup. Deeper than deep learning, Szilárd. And what he does is doing a lot of benchmarks, okay? He tries to figure out how fast these things are and how easy to use them. And he's renting his way around the world with a presentation called Better Than Deep Learning Gradient Boosting Machines. Just again, simple stuff like what works, what not works, how fast it works. I mean, he doesn't have much hair. There's a reason for that. He tried all these tools beforehand. And I have to like really copy paste one slide from his thing because here comes the flood. Is that he tried to use Spark for this machine learning thingy. You know, Spark is the Spark is the Spark these days, and it's just like, yeah. So I didn't say it. He said that total fucking garbage. Um, we're gonna get into the things that I'm more interested in. Being a data janitor, data engineer, is really like how to make this thing work in production. His view is kind of close to my view because the hype is really going down. Like this whole autonomous driving thing, it doesn't seem to get closer to us. Even the good robotics companies are going down these days. So I think that if you're in data science, you might think about learning a bit engineering. You know, you never know what will happen next year. Good. So we covered everything. Now we might actually have some time to do the base. Huh? Typically, this is when people say, like, oh my God, we have this thing in production. It's kind of working, but we have to scale, and we're gonna get acquired, and I don't know. Then let's do the baseline. You know, move, store, explore, transform, like data engineering stuff. That's me. I think it's very relevant here that there's a cultural aspect to this. That there, and I find it really true that Slavic programmers are somehow a thing. I'm also coming from Eastern Europe. Um, you know, Edith Piaf said, use your faults, use your defects, then you're gonna be a star. That's my thing for that. What happens with engineering, you know, major problem with us engineers is, you know, if you think that something is not really working, then we put another layer on top of it and abstract it away. Yeah, it used to happen like every 3-5 years. These days it's more like 1-2 years and getting a bit abstracted away, but still. And this is an actually existing ferry in Germany. Okay, that's a ferry. No, this is a ferry. There's the ferry. Yes, I have a mentor. I have to clear his name so I can include his name in the slide. Some approaches that, you know, distributed computing is not a solved problem. Maybe machines will be able to solve this in some time, but I don't think we're yet there. I don't know if you've been trying to, you know, Sherlock Holmes microservice-based architecture when something breaks. It's not easy. And still, I think that, you know, if you can figure what to do with one machine, I give you a second one. And I think it's a pretty good approach because it can save you a lot of headaches. Even if you have to embrace dirty reality, because people ask me, like, you know, what makes a data engineer? Like, I had a boss recently who was like, there's no such role as a data engineer. It's like, it's a backend engineer. It's like, no, maybe. I would say that a data engineer who knows all the falsehoods about names, times, places that programmers believe. You know, like, can you name your kid drop table? Type of things. And also typically backend engineers do take care of like with the business process and one piece of object to data, while you try to handle the flood, technically, while everybody's stomping on your head at the same time. Most important thing that you can do for your survival is to try to be cloud agnostic, because again, these are the biggest players who try to get your money, and they do everything to get your money. Okay. My 2 cents, still AWS is the best. Typically what they have is like DOM access, like you can just cut with them, but they kind of working, and they have like a, you know, Headspace. They started a long time ago. We just read in the news that Azure sold more cloud services than Amazon last year. Yeah, crying. I mean, they put all the enterprises there. If you really have to use Azure, I can tell you which parts are working. And Google competes with price. Really, most of the migration projects I'm hearing about is that people are moving to AWS to GCP these days. Maybe it's the time I should know that GCP was down for 3 days. Kubernetes. And again, everybody thinks that ETL is a solved problem. Doesn't seem like that. My rage starts really with I state that Airflow is an over-engineered, underperforming nightmare. Okay, if you go to GitHub and look at how many stars a project has, not all stars are equal. I'm telling you, it's very important. If I really like these analytical stories, if an ex-Facebook data engineer can set up Airflow without Docker and Kubernetes, I think, in 3 months for like, I know, 50 data sources, that's not something I would say it's really worth the investment. Go out, explore the wilderness. There are different tools for different things, okay? Guilty as charged, during my tenure in data, I was involved in developing 2 of them, very different tools. Both of them are in production in different companies, different sizes. Some are pretty big. I mentioned this Mara thing that just came out that should serve you pretty well in the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years of your growth. But if you think and if you experience that Airflow is something good, then I think you should revisit your life. So that's not how life should be, I'd say. Showdown, I got a hero for the day, Mark. He's a data engineer who's actually hired gun. You can hire him. What he's doing benchmarks. I think this is the most repeated word of mine, benchmarks. He took like a sample data set that's semi-big, like 500 gigs uncompressed CSV. That's like 1.5 billion text URIs, and he tries to run the same queries, tries to load, tries to do analysis and different setups. He does a pretty good job. Just covering his work could take like an hour. Try to just have the best snippets. On the interesting thing, Spark. He did a lot of testing with Spark in different environments. One machine, a lot of machines, HDFS, not HDFS, but quick takeaway, he even did like a Raspberry Pi. Okay. And based on that, we actually know that Raspberry Pi equals 1/6 of a vCPU in Amazon. Just measured out. If you have to use Spark, you should do it with HDFS because it's much faster than using it with S3. And it seems like it's kind of linear scaling. So if you add more machines, it's going to be fun for you. And I just tried to highlight one kind of good deal that you can get pretty okay-ish in terms of this experiment. Machine and delivery with like $2.5 per hour. Presto is the other workhorse these days that everybody's using. Bad news is doesn't scale linearly. So if you add more machines, it will not go faster. And finally, again, HDFS, you need it to make it fast. And the best performance you have is with one big machine opposed to like a lot of smaller machines. So really, the cost of network, the cost of distribution is something that you have to think about, not talking about the maintenance. Lazy evaluation. You don't care about your tools. You know, how does Spark, Presto, Redshift, or whatever you can buy in the market compare to each other? The same set things. I think it's pretty impressive still that, you know, what the big guys are doing is okay. Sometimes it's hard to compare because they charge by volume computed and stuff like that. But again, we're talking about like 50 cluster Prestos and 11 MX large, so big things. And they definitely verse what you can buy off the shelves, and still like even the managed Presto is good in this comparison. And here comes my fun part. Buy one machine, okay, with one Intel Core i5. And I got bad news for you. On one hand, like whatever you can tune Elasticsearch in a way that is faster than a Presto or Spark. I found it funny. But also, never forget about the Slavic programmers. ClickHouse is an open source thing from Yandex. And running on a single freaking machine, a laptop, is slightly faster than one i3 8X large. And that costs you like €600. Just say. Okay, so This is a message actually that we at Blocker people make all the third-party trackers useless. We don't know how. Nobody did like a major research of what kind of skewing it does to the data collection. But actually, whatever you try to use, buy from the market, put the snippet in your thing, it will not help you at all. Okay. So in 2018, you have to have your own event tracker. I'm sorry. It's sad. It's not super complicated, but again, most likely as your company grew, with all this implicit trust in Google Analytics and Mixpanel and whatnot you're using or buying, that should go away because you're looking at the distorted universe. And I'm not even talking about A/B testing. Like if you're losing like at least 9% of the data, sometimes the companies I worked beforehand with, they use like 16% as a baseline typically. So 9% is sure, 16 is typical. What kind of inference can you have based on this? I don't know. Maybe you're seeing the future better than me, but from a mathematical perspective, it's pretty hard to figure out what's happening out there. What you're trying to implement these days is like very, very, very simple ELT thing. So extract, load, and then transform is, because I had to have some arrows also in the presentation. Super simple. With a Kinesis fire hose and an API gateway, we collect backend and front-end events. This thing is like 56 lines in CloudFormation. Okay, it's super not complicated. You parse this in S3, you parse this your production in S3. If you're brave, you can even use AWS Glue to convert all this crap into ORC or Parquet, so like pre-compressed format to S3. So when your hosted Presto, what you call Spectrum, accesses it, you will have like 10x performance. And using the managed Redshift as the real data warehouse and Spectrum as like the data lake, you can get pretty far. And again, being old, lazy, stupid, and slow, I try to move with the minimum amount of code deployed. Because code is dependency. It will break. That's the nature of it. So, great. We fixed the fundamentals. Most likely the end will come when data is actually becoming and accepted as a business partner in the company. So like there's going to be some kind of head of data, bird of prey on top of this whole very shaky pyramid. And if you're doing data, this is the thing you do. Business comes and they say no. Sometimes it takes a year to say no, sometimes it takes a week, but most of the time this is happening, you're delivering the bad news. Still, what role you want to have or you can have in a company can be very different. That you just like, say, yeah. We can provide you data to underlie any kind of business decision, or you actually have power to make, the real thing go up and the bad thing go down. And also the type of position you have, whether you're actually an actor or just helping out the C-star also do whatever you want. If you're doing these two things, you have to take in mind. One is that, again, hype that's happening. And also, this is a war in terms of people. Good people leave. That's the shortest way to put it. You have to fight to keep them. And the biggest tension you might have with is going to be with marketing, as far as I've seen in my experience. And it's really hard because I think that they typically have a lot of budget. Budget means power, and it's really hard to convince them, after they spent 200,000 on a botnet campaign, that you can't do attribution on that thing. You could, but maybe it doesn't work. The problems you have to face day by day when interacting with them is that, again, ad blocking is a thing, and it's something that you have to be fully aware, top of mind. How do you handle it? What can you do in practice? Those days are gone when you went to Facebook and Google and you just this smart marketing, because the market is mature. So like CPA is not really performing well. You can't have that much leverage. Again, conversion and attribution, that belongs to the distributed computing bucket. It's not solved. Like, it's super hard to have a feasible understanding that's real, that you can act on. And again, the market is like that. You spend most of the money with big ones, and they're not your friends. The last one is like, I think every 3 months there's some kind of funny news that Facebook overstated like video ads by 900%. Not 4, not 20, 900. And like they are in court now that you're lying. And I think one of the most underrated things that you still can do, and it's also not solved because there are no really good solutions out there in the market, is CRM. Guilty as charged. Once we built our own CRM because we couldn't buy something in the market. And I also seen like full departments leave when they've been told that they have to integrate with Salesforce. They said like, no. But again, as far as also the stock market gonna have some fun, be focused on your existing customers and try to make the best out of them. That's why you can have like proper event tracking, and maybe you have to build that by yourself. GDPR, yeah. Again, so the Y2K happened, nobody died. There are some interesting court cases happening, but generally I think we survived. And for us, I think the major learning is that if you don't do some very evil things by default, you should be pretty fairly okay. And it's more like a process that you have to follow, and it's more like about transparency that you have to tell your customers what you're doing with your data. So it's not, rocket surgery. I mean, if you're running machine learning models in production, that can be funny. I'm looking forward to have those startups who take like a model and translate it to plain English. That you can put it on the website that, okay, this is what you're doing with your things. Because in theory, this is what you should do. But again, one caveat is that programmatic advertisement is a bit like dead now, based on this. Not super dead, but kind of dying. And again, I would say that there are sane people out there, again, this funnily Eva and Jacques, who can give you like a recipe, what to look for, and how can you roll this through this company if you still have something that you have to stitch up. But I'm happy we have it in Europe. Everybody is always hiring, okay? If you don't hire, you hire, technically, so please come talk to us if you have any questions. And I hope that you have questions now and you say that I'm wrong. That's why I came. That's why I try to be slightly more bold than generally I am. Thank you.